In July 1925, in Dayton, Tennessee, substitute science teacher John Scopes was placed on trial for violating the state's anti-evolution law by teaching evolution in the public school. Ordinarily, such a case would not even be noticed in the rest of the state. However, the case that followed would be anything but ordinary. From the beginning, the trial was never as simple as it appeared. The newly formed American Civil Liberties Union had encouraged John Scopes to challenge the law. As the trial approached, both sides appointed well-known lawyers to try the case. For the prosecution, they called William Jennings Bryan, three-time presidential candidate, and more recently, the leader of the fight against evolution. The defense, agnostic Clarence Darrow, volunteered his services to defend Scopes. Darrow had made a name for himself by defending prominent murder cases with an extreme success rate. But the selection of two famous lawyers was just the beginning of the spectacle. For the people of Dayton, the trial was an opportunity to revitalize their failing economy. Therefore, every business and merchant sought to cash in on the crowds of people that descended on their town. Outside the courthouse, the streets were blocked off and an impromptu carnival was set up. The circus atmosphere is part of why the trial would become known as the Monkey Trial. And the same circus atmosphere would carry over into the trial itself and the proceedings. The trial that followed was nearly as intense as the 100-degree heat inside the courtroom. For 6 days, the two sides argued over whether Christianity and evolution were compatible, and whether evolution is valid as a theory, or if it should be taught in the public schools. Each day, newspapers from every major city in the United States published updates of the proceedings. From the beginning, the prosecution appeared to have the upper hand, since the judge insisted on opening each day's proceedings with prayer, and multiple times refused to allow Darrow to call his professional evolutionary scientists as expert witnesses. However, everything changed on day 7, when Darrow challenged Bryan to take the stand as an expert witness on Christianity. Bryan agreed, and for 2 hours, Darrow grilled Bryan on matters of the authority and veracity of the Bible, and also on religion and philosophy and science and evolution in general. In some areas, Darrow was able to expose that Bryan did not fully understand the matters being discussed and was unable to give a satisfactory response. Though this testimony would be struck from the court record, for America as a whole, this would be the most significant part of the trial. When the trial ended the next day, Scopes was found guilty and fined $100. But in the eyes of the American public, evolution appeared to have won what would become known as the decisive battle in the fundamentalist-modernist controversy. Why did the Scopes trial have such a significant impact on America? The mere spectacle of it is not enough to explain its lasting impact. Rather, the Scopes trial was significant because it brought several contrasting trends into direct confrontation with one another. First, the trial was significant because both sides sought to make it so. This was due to the ongoing fundamentalist-modernist controversy, which had been going on since modernism arrived in America a few decades prior. Modernism was built on the two theories of higher criticism and Darwinian evolution. Higher criticism challenged the Bible's authority, and Darwinism challenged its accounts of creation, and by extension, all of its history and its description of humans themselves. In response, conservative Christians rallied around a set of core doctrines known as the fundamentals, and therefore became known as the fundamentalists, and were devoted to fighting against any possible expansion of modernist teaching. However, prior to this trial, most of the controversy had taken place in colleges, churches, and seminaries among intellectuals and professors, and had very little impact on average Americans. The trial, due to its taking place in a small rural town, and just the nature of the proceedings of the trial, brought the controversy to a level that was accessible to everyone. In this trial, both sides saw the opportunity to land a knockout punch, so to speak, in the fundamentalist modernist controversy. Therefore, the trial was never really about, did John Scopes break the law? Rather, the trial was about, should evolution be taught in public schools? For the ACLU and the modernist movement, this was an opportunity to establish their worldview as a valid one and to assert their authority over American education. As ACLU founder Roger Baldwin declared, "We shall take the Scopes case to the United States Supreme Court, if necessary, to establish that a teacher may tell the truth without going to jail." For fundamentalism, this was a direct challenge to their authority. It was an opportunity not just to defend the Tennessee law, but to vindicate their cause and to inspire other states to pass similar laws. Therefore, both sides believed they could advance their cause through the trial of John Scopes. Another reason for the trial's significance was media sensationalism. There are two sides to this trend as well, the papers and the people. For the newspapers, they sought to make the trial as exciting, dramatic, and extreme as possible, with the goal of boosting sales and in some cases of pushing an agenda. This type of journalism was nothing new in America and had directly contributed to American involvement in both of its previous wars. However, this time, the agenda being pushed was evolution, and the place to drive this cause was in Dayton, Tennessee. Therefore, every major newspaper in the United States posted daily updates of the trial, complete with bold headlines and exaggerated accounts of the proceedings. These papers almost unanimously mocked the state of Tennessee and Christianity as a whole for their backwardness and unscientificness. Therefore, what most Americans knew of the trial came from these biased and sensationalized accounts. However, the newspapers could only publish a story if it would sell. Looking deeper, the media sensationalism of the trial thus reveals that the American public were intensely interested in the proceedings at Dayton. Many Americans no doubt shared the anti-religious or at least anti-establishment leanings of the newspapers. Others were merely curious in an entertaining story. Many Christians hoped to hear of the final defeat of Darwinism. So, for all these reasons and many more, Americans flocked to hear the latest updates from the trial. Finally, the Scopes trial revealed the general unpreparedness of Christianity to face the modernist movement. As apologist James Bealby said, "When Christianity is part of the air that people breathe, there is relatively less opportunity for apologetics, and the apologetics that occurs is generally of low quality." This was definitely the case for Christianity in the late 1800s. And with little opposition, very little time was spent preparing to defend their beliefs. The advance of modernism in the early 1900s was largely due to the unpreparedness of Christianity to meet it. During the Scopes trial, many Americans saw for the first time the vulnerability and the weakness of American Christianity. Not only were Christians unprepared in how to defend their own beliefs, they were largely ignorant of the teachings of Darwinism and of modern science in general. Rather than study and refute Darwinism, the primary tactic had been to silence and remove it. This trend is what started the trial in the first place. Before the trial, William Jennings Bryan had led a campaign for lawmakers across the nation to pass laws banning the teaching of evolution. Tennessee Representative John Butler, at Bryan's suggestion, had sponsored and passed the Butler Act, which banned evolution in the public schools, and thus is the foundation of the trial itself. Butler later admitted to having very little knowledge of the teachings of evolution, just that it could corrupt America and therefore should be opposed. Bryan also revealed his ignorance on the topic during his critical interview on the last day of the trial. This kind of blind defense was bound to fail against a concerted modernist attack. At the end of the trial, William Jennings Bryan remarked, "Here has been fought out a little case of little consequences as a case. But the world is interested because it raises an issue, and that issue will someday be settled right, whether it is settled on our side or the other side." Though the matter would eventually be settled for the other side in the years that followed, Bryan was undoubtedly correct as to the significance. Because of the underlying trends of modernism, sensationalism, and Christian unpreparedness, the little trial has had a lasting effect that continues in America to this day.